The Red Army should have erased Finland in a couple of weeks. 450,000 men, 2,000 tanks, 3,000 aircraft, against the country of loggers and shopkeepers who got their call-up papers 3 weeks ago. On paper, it isn't a war. It's a rounding error. December 22nd, 1939, Moscow. Stalin's senior staff are reading casualty reports from Finland with champagne still warm in their glasses. Someone mentions a place called Kollaa, a defensive line held by farmers in Mittens. One general repeats the word, Mittens, and the room laughs. He taps the map where Kollaa is marked and tells his aide to check back in a week. By then, he says, it'll be a footnote. At that exact moment, hundreds of kilometers away, 34-year-old Simo Häyhä is lying face down in snow so cold it makes his teeth ache. No scope to fog, no glass to catch the light, just iron sights, packed snow over the muzzle to hide the flash, and a Soviet patrol moving below him like dark smudges on white paper. He doesn't rush. One shot. A man drops. Another dives for a tree too thin to stop anything. The second shot finds him. By the time the survivors understand what's happening, Häyhä is already sliding to a new position, erasing the warmth his body left in the snow. Within 3 months, Kollaa will still hold. The farmers in Mittens will have stopped every Soviet attempt to break the line. And Simo Häyhä, the man Moscow is laughing at without knowing his name, will become the deadliest sniper in history. Our story starts 3 days earlier, when a reporter sticks a microphone under a captain's nose and asks a question everyone in Finland is thinking. Will this line hold? December 19th, 1939, at Kollaa. Snow drifts against the sandbags. A reporter named Tauno is holding a microphone wrapped in cloth, trying to keep it from freezing solid. Arne Edward Juutilainen stands there with his men, 35 years old, lean from years of military service. He's got one glove off because his trigger finger can't afford to hesitate. Tauno asks him the question everyone's wondering. Will this line hold? Arne just smiles like the wind just told him something funny. Kestää, he says. It will hold. The words land like something real, something you can actually stand on. His men have plenty of reasons to be scared. The Soviet army has thrown numbers at them that seem impossible when you're one person with a rifle and a frozen can of peas in your pocket. More guns, more shells, more trucks than you could count. They can spend 1,000 lives before lunch if some colonel tells them to. The guys at Kollaa watch the flashes on the horizon and feel the ground shake with each explosion. But they understand something the colonel doesn't. How a pine forest stops an army that's stuck to the road. How it swallows big groups whole. Out on the ridge beyond Arne's trench, Simo Häyhä is moving through snow so deep it'd stop your heart if you tried to stand still. He's 34, a farmer from Rautjärvi, with a face worn smooth by years of wind. His rifle has no scope. Through iron sights, there's nothing to fog up in this cold, nothing to catch the light and give away where he is. He's packed snow in front of the muzzle, so there's no powder cloud when he shoots, nothing to mark his spot. His glove comes off, and his finger touches metal that bites at skin. A patrol moves below him, just dark shapes on white snow. Simo doesn't rush. When he fires, the sound dies flat because the cold air breaks sound differently. One man drops. The others dive for trees too thin to stop anything. The second shot takes a man whose breath had just made a small cloud in the freezing air. The third shot sends something primal through the survivors, and the rest scramble away from the open ground, looking for cover. Simo inches his rifle over, keeps his sights at chest height, and waits. Minutes later, quiet comes back. He checks his watch. He moves to a new spot. The ground still holds the warmth where he was lying, and he won't teach the enemy to look there. By December 22nd, the chaplain Antti Johannes Rantamaa is writing down what he hears in the trenches. Who's alive, who's wounded, who has to go back because his feet won't work anymore. Numbers next to names. 3 weeks under fire already, and it keeps going. Temperatures dropping to 30 below zero, then worse. Ammo crates opened, counted, shared. Häyhä keeps his careful tallies. Numbers don't exist by themselves, they're tied to real choices made by real people. On the 23rd, a squad leader from Savonia notices something. The hollow where his men are dug in is perfect for shooting, but terrible for getting out. It looks safe, but it's really a trap. He tells his men, "At dawn, we move back 10 paces, one at a time." So they do. When dawn comes, the Soviet barrage hammers right across where they used to be, and the earth there jumps like something alive. The new line holds. The barrage stops. Footsteps crunch in the snow. A Soviet platoon comes in with bayonets up, moving fast and smart. The Finns wait until they're past a marker someone measured. Then every rifle fires once. The platoon staggers, tries to spread out, hits wire, and pulls back so fast their hats stay in the snow. The men at Kollaa say it again now. Kollaa kestää. It will hold. This time it means something different. We hold because we choose to. And we choose because this place lets us fight our way. The river and the woods cut the sightlines. Big formations can't maneuver. Tanks hate rocks that stick up like old teeth. Cold thickens grease and turns tracks into stubborn iron that won't move right. A colonel with a map can order soldiers west, but he can't warm the oil.
A small line stops a huge army because of geography and how you fight inside that geography, like a hand inside a glove. Ski out at night, talk less, cut the road, make a pocket, starve it. Don't be there when it gets angry. White clothes turn people into fog. Spruce shadows hide movement. When you've got less than the other guy, you make him move more than he wants to. That night, a runner tells Arne that the left platoon is almost out of ammunition. To get bullets there, a sled has to cross a rise that someone with binoculars and a telephone is watching. The safe choice is to wait for dark. He looks at the light, then at the men who'll have to sprint behind that sled, hunched over like they're chasing a calf. "Now," he says. 4 men go. One drops in the middle, a small black dot on white snow, and 2 others carry him back by his jacket and belt. The sled gets through. The left platoon holds. Later, in the trench, Arne warms his hand by the stove and doesn't look at it. By New Year's, everyone's become an expert in how cold breaks machines. Oil thickens and springs snap. Scope lenses fog with breath. Rifle bolts need a rhythm you learn in your sleep. The Finns figure it out. Iron sights instead of glass. Canvas padded on metal. Mittens with a slit for your trigger finger. A pinch of snow packed on the muzzle. Mess this up and you die. Get it right and you live to do it again tomorrow. Nearly 3 months. That's how long the line holds. 3 solid months under constant pressure until the March peace. 30 below isn't just a number. You understand it when you see a man's mouth bleeding at the corners because the air's cutting him and he keeps talking anyway. The tallies grow day by day because the man behind the iron sight works like a farmer at harvest, patient, repetitive, exact. Somewhere in a city far away, someone who promised supplies stares at a map where this thin line refuses to move. When the reporter asked if Kollaa would hold, and Arne said it would, he was making a promise. On nights like this, the men say it quieter now, and they mean it more than ever. It's the night of January 3rd, 1940, on the Raate Road. Black trees and white snow stretch out forever. A convoy of trucks is so long the back can't hear what the front is doing. Someone whispers, "Lights out," and the whole line goes dark. Engines tick and cough. Men sitting on the truck beds breathe out clouds that float up like ghosts before disappearing into the freezing air. Then a tree cracks somewhere ahead. It falls hard and the trunk slams the snow with branches exploding everywhere. A driver a kilometre back feels that impact shake his chest. He's been told to wait, so he waits. Skiers come out of the woods, moving smooth and calm. A bottle hits a truck hood and suddenly there's fire, bright orange, the kind you don't get in town because there's no dust out here. The flames creep across the metal, finding spots where a wrench touched. A private grabs his coat, trying to put it out, but his sleeve catches. Someone yells to drive around it,
except the road has edges and those ditches aren't friendly. Another tree comes down, then another. The Finnish skiers aren't fighting the whole column at once. They're cutting it into pieces, what they call mottis. So each piece has its own nightmare. One group's out of gas, another lost its commanding officer, another's running out of food. One has too many wounded to move. When soldiers from one pocket try to help the next one over, the skiers cross that same road where heavy boots sink right through. At 20 below and getting colder, a broken truck is basically a trap. Soviet troops try to push into the woods and clear a path, but bullets come from angles that make every step cost way too much. At a spot where the road narrows, a Finnish corporal tells his men not to shoot. He waits until soldiers fill the exact spot he'd measured earlier by counting his own heartbeats to a stump. He nods, and small explosions clear that space. He tells his guys to move, and they slip back into the shadows instead of standing around where they just fired. By the 5th day, the trapped pockets realize they're not getting out. Fires burn where there should be hot coffee. A doctor with frozen hands pushes a needle into someone's arm, and the skin fights back like leather. In another pocket, tank crews try to start their machines by lighting fires under the engines, but smoke fills the fighting compartment until everyone's choking and they give up. A sergeant orders them to dig in, using the tank hulls as little forts. It works for a while, until bottles start flying again, and those forts become ovens. This is 1 week, January 1st through the 7th. It's hovering around 30 below. At that temperature, a small fire on a truck isn't just bad, it's a death sentence and a beacon for men in white coats. The Soviets will count their losses back in Moscow. Official numbers say around 4,500, though the Finns will count higher once they find bodies in the snow. About 1,000 more surrender with their hands up, and they still look dignified because they didn't break. They just got cut off from the world and had to eat what they'd brought. At one spot, a Finnish saw team takes a chance. Tracers comb the bark right above them. The first guy says, "Now," and the second pushes, not when the tree's perfect, when the opening is there. The trunk tips, the base cracks, and the road goes dark again. That choice, pushing too soon instead of waiting, saves hours. In a week like this, hours are everything. On the 7th day, the trapped groups try to break out. They pick a place where the snow looks thin and the forest opens up a bit. They move careful and cover each other. The first shots that answer them don't come from ahead. They come from the sides and back, because the skiers know exactly how desperate soldiers move. The breakout gets jammed up and stops cold. The road turns into a graveyard of frozen machines and men. 4 days later, back in the Soviet Union, the state handles failure the way it always does. Alexei Vinogradov, the commander whose division got shattered on this road, gets stood against a wall and shot. The Soviets had more of everything except 3 things: the right place, the right method, and the right moment, all hitting at the same time. Smaller was faster, and faster won. The saw team pushing a tree before it's ready, while bullets stitch the bark above them, winning minutes that turn into hours, that turn into a broken army. That's where it changes. It's March 6th at Kollaa. The snow's got a crust on it, the kind that holds you for 2 steps before you break through on the 3rd. Orders start coming down. They're moving out to counterattack, to push up a knoll that overlooks the road. Simo Häyhä stands with a small group. Everything sounds muffled, like it's happening behind glass. He tastes iron in his mouth. Someone yells and they move. Machine gun fire tears the bark off a stump right in front of him. Splinters sting his cheek. He raises his rifle, aims low, because when men crouch, their jackets puff up, and fires. The rest spread out to the left. Then there's a flash that's different from the others, a crack that's sharper than the rest. The world takes his jaw. He falls into snow so clean that the blood looks wrong against it. The men around him don't stop. They finish pushing forward and come back with hands already stiff from cold. Antti Rantama's working somewhere nearby. He pulls a kid's hand out of his pocket so he'll help carry a stretcher. He closes a man's eyes without letting his own tear up in the wind. He knows who this man is. He's written that name down plenty of times next to numbers in a ledger. When they lift him, the bandage sticks where it shouldn't. They load Simo onto a sled, and the driver talks to the horse like it understands. The sky goes pale, and the trees turn into black lines on white. The ward smells like carbolic and wool. In another room, a young soldier with both legs still there is singing by accident because the ether's got him loose. Simo sleeps like stone. Days go by. On March 13th, the staff turn him and the gauze pulls at the wound. A voice comes from a radio in the corner. Peace has been signed. The enemy didn't stop because one man went down. Soviet soldiers at Kollaa kept coming until time ran out. They came through wire and shells and didn't back off when the ground shook. The line held because these men knew what they were doing and because of the place itself. When someone asks him later if he has regrets, Simo gives the same answer he always does. Not many. Enough. A week from wound to peace. March 6th to March 13th. More than 3 months of holding the line at Kollaa ends with a ceasefire. The line keeps its dignity even though the map changes. Winter stays deep even in the wards. When doors open, breath smokes. Food's going to be hard to come by. Talking's going to wear him out. The mirror won't be kind to Simo for a while. Summer will come back, and the sky will speak a new language, a lot of guns talking at once. June 25th, 1944. The Karelian Isthmus smells like wet pine and gas fumes. Soviet tanks are rolling forward with infantry riding on top, and the guns behind them sound like doors slamming all over town at once. The Finns are pulling back, digging in around rocks and lakes wherever they can. A young officer named Lauri Torni is lying flat in the birch trees with his patrol, counting. Not tanks, beats. How long between the first 2 tanks and the next 2? 3 seconds. That's how long it takes a guy to jump down and find cover. 4 seconds until the guns behind them open up again. One of his men scribbles a number on his palm. Another watches the sky for dive bombers. Torni sends a runner back with a prisoner who doesn't speak Finnish, but his dirty boots and greasy hands tell you everything you need to know about where he came from. Up on a hill near the main road, a forward observer is kneeling over a map, holding a telephone. The Finns don't have guns everywhere, but they've figured out how to make all the guns they do have work together like one big gun. That idea came from General Vilho Petter Nenonen. He taught different artillery batteries to act as a team. When the forward observer calls out something like, "Target 2, box 3, depth 2, and rattles off some numbers, gun crews 2 kilometers apart, too far to even see each other, twist their dials and fire like they're standing right next to one another. Then the observer says, "Hold, 10 seconds. He can hear the tank's gears grinding. He knows what that sound means. The men around him are tense. 10 seconds doesn't feel short when you're waiting to see if you're right or dead. The observer listens to himself breathing, then, "Fire!" The first shells land on one edge. The second volley walks inward. The third hits the road right when the second pair of tanks rolls into the kill zone. Someone waves a flag. A rider goes down under a wheel. The observer calls "repeat," and the crews don't question it. Harry Järv, a patrol leader in IR-61, will remember this later. He carried both a camera and a rifle. Near the fighting at Ihantala, the hinge beside Ihantala, he's leading men across a ditch when a mortar cracks. Then it fades, like a door slamming far away. A splinter hits him. He smiles, so the others know they can patch him up later. Right now, they've got work to do. Someone will photograph him with a white bandage around his head. The line stops falling apart the same way fire spreads through winter snow, through small choices that don't seem like much at the time. The observer waits those 10 seconds. A gun crew shifts 3 mils left because one tank doesn't drive the road the way yesterday's did. Torni's man brings in a prisoner whose shoulder patch says more than a speech ever could. A German plane comes down the line, bombs unzipping a row of trucks at exactly the moment those trucks would have made a difference. The enemy is angry and professional, pushing hard. Tanks punch forward with force. Infantry move with rifles ready and eyes forward. They drop into ditches. They get thrown back, then come again.
2 weeks of it, June 25th to July 9th. Waves of attacks met and stopped until the line holds. Tens of thousands of men fighting. Shells measured by trainloads. But what really matters are the seconds between hold and fire. The moments between one shot and the next. Concentration happens in heartbeats. Artillery becomes a tool for reshaping the land. Invisible lines get drawn, erased, and drawn again around things that would otherwise roll through and destroy the country. Each battery is like a voice in a choir. One voice alone is fine, but Nenonan taught them to hit the same note at the same time without being in the same room. He built tables that tell each crew, aim here instead, when the observer calls out a target. The tables do the math. Distance, angle, wind you can't even feel yet. The observer doesn't order every gun individually. He names the song and which part to play, and the trained crews join in. That's why repeat and shift happen in seconds, not minutes. An attack that was supposed to roll all the way to Helsinki hits a wall of fire it can't see. Tank crews that were joking are now huddled in metal boxes, counting seconds the same way Lowry counted beats in the trees. The momentum dies right there in front of men who planned to ride it through. The forward observer holds for 10 seconds before he says fire. 10 seconds to catch those tanks in the box. If he's wrong, the road opens up and they break through. He's not wrong. Discipline and nerve turn numbers into a stopped assault. The guns go quiet. The trains keep running. A whistle blows. People go home. And what happens next decides what survives and what doesn't. July 1944 in Karelia. The roads are mud and milk, cows walking alongside the carts. Sylvie Simo ties a key to a string around her wrist. She probably won't need it, but something tells her to keep it close anyway. The gate hinge at the end of her yard squeaks. She loves that sound. She puts a pot in the cart, then changes her mind and takes it back out, packing a ladle instead. Her mother starts to say something, then stops. Scolding takes energy you don't have. At the station, photographer Pekka Kyytinen crouches by the platform, framing a shot through his camera. He writes down a place name, a date, a town. A girl with a scarf tied under her chin glances at the camera the way kids look at a dog. Curious, a little cautious, mostly just focused on what she's doing. Next to her, an older man writes a family name on a luggage tag and presses down hard with his pencil. The station agent shouts, "When nothing else works, make noise." "Board now," someone calls. Over 400,000 people will leave their homes in the coming months. That's roughly 1 in every 8 Finns alive. But right now, the station shows them one family at a time, then another, then another. Each one climbs steps that some carpenter cut who knows how long ago. The soldiers who fought through winter and summer are keeping track too. A flag rolled up in a duffel bag belongs to a man who hasn't unrolled it since he stood still and listened to the radio announce that peace had come. He'll unroll it someday, somewhere else, and when he does, that cloth will smell like dust and wool and smoke. Inside the evacuation train, benches, and where there aren't benches, straw. Crates do double duty as tables. One corner has a stove with a pipe that leaks a little. When you feed it, it gives off a sweet metal smell. The conductor walks through counting heads and chickens. Soldiers help lift the heavy trunks, and sometimes the same guy who helped lift will climb back down and walk alongside for a while until the whistle calls him back. Pack what you actually need. Label what you can. Don't block the door. Keep the water where everyone can reach it. September 19th. The platform loudspeaker coughs. The voice that comes out sounds like every office everywhere, careful, formal. It says, "Armistice," then talks about terms and borders. People keep doing what they were already doing. A train that has to leave is going to leave. A man standing near the loudspeaker nods once, looks down, and turns away. Sylvie closes her hand on the key and keeps it. Her mother sits down, ties her scarf back up, and makes a joke about the pot they decided not to bring. Everyone laughs. The whole car goes quiet for a second. Then the train starts to move. The sound is long and low over the steel tracks. Someone says, quiet and simple, "We still have Finland." The jokes from the winter about bread baskets feel like ancient history now. What does victory actually look like when you have to live with it? A country that keeps its name. A people who move together when they're told to move. An army that learned to turn numbers into mistakes and then stopped when the loudspeaker told them to stop. The map isn't the same and never will be again, but the flag is the same. Somewhere in one of those cars, rolled up in a duffel bag on a rack, it shifts a little every time the train hits a seam in the track.